Jim Bittigary of Coldwell Banker Realty, the Cherry Valley Hotel, the Homestead Beer Company, and Audio Visual Connections for their contributions and support of this event.
This is a forum, not a debate, and our purpose is twofold. We seek to provide a platform through which voters can learn about each candidate and their respective points of view on pertinent issues. And we want to provide a vehicle for respectful civil discourse on these matters. The goal is to let voters see and hear the candidates respond to common prompts. We will keep firm time limits.
First, each candidate will have up to 3 minutes for a self-introduction. Then they will answer several questions developed from community input, having 2 minutes to address each question. Finally, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing remarks.
Be reminded that candidates for school board run as nonpartisans. Voters may select as many as 2, and the term of a school board member is 4 years. Finally, and most importantly, we want to thank each of these candidates for their interest and motivation to serve the Granville schools and our community in this vital way. So let's get started.
Thank you. We'll begin this evening with self-introductions, and we'll start with Dennis Capps.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Capps. My wife Kelly and I moved to Granville nearly 12 years ago. Like many folks in Granville, we moved here for the exceptional schools. So I'm honored and humbled to be before you now as a candidate for school board. We have 4 kids, ages 9, 7, and 2 5-year-olds. 2 of our kids are in the school district now, and 2 will be next year. So we obviously have a deep interest in keeping Granville schools great. From an educational background, I graduated from Thomas Worthington University, high school, not too far from here, and then didn't go too far for college either, graduating from Ohio State. In 2018, I was fortunate enough to be sponsored by my employer to take part in a program called Leadership Columbus, which is intended to prepare leaders to serve on boards just like this one. My business experience is very wide-ranging. I started my career in nonprofits and then moved directly into multi-billion-dollar Fortune 500 companies. I'm also a business owner and an investor in 3 small businesses. So I have a very wide background and range of experience. Community involvement is something that I've always been passionate about, and one of my favorite community activities was I had the pleasure of serving for 8 years as a powerlifting coach for the Worthington Special Olympics team. I'm running for school board because, above all, I believe in this very politically charged climate. We owe it to our kids to leave our politics, our egos at the door, and put kids first. And if I'm elected to school board, that's what I'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm Thomas Miller. I'm currently the Vice President of the Granville School Board, and I wanted to first take a minute to thank the Chamber of Commerce, the League of Women Voters, and all the community members that are watching to help you make a great decision about the upcoming school board race. I also want to take a quick minute and thank the rest of the people here at the table for stepping up to be a school board member. It's a job that's often considered thankless, but one that I've truly enjoyed. And having served for 10 years on the Granville School Board, I can say that the last 2 years have been extremely time-consuming, but rewarding because of the experiences that we've been able to give. And the last 2 months have been especially contentious, right? There's been national political polarization that's fueled by the media and social media, but I'm confident that Granville can rise above that. Despite all that, Granville remains one of the best school districts in the state. And to keep that up, there are 3 things that I've found we need to continue to focus on. The first is my experience on the board finance committee has given me the perspective of sustainable funding for our schools. We can't outspend our community's willingness to support our schools, or we won't be able to maintain the important programs that contribute to our students' success. Secondly, we need whole child education. And although that's kind of a fuzzy term, what it means to me is there's a lot more that happens beyond the classrooms. We have outstanding extracurriculars in sports and the arts to demonstrate the dimensions that our community has prioritized in our portrait of a graduate. A great academic background is not useful if you can't communicate it and you can't demonstrate leadership to your fellow citizens. And lastly, this all comes in the context of an excellent academic background, which Granville has always excelled at. Critical thinking is at the core of our experience, and the proven strategies of project-based learning are a new strategy that Granville Schools has adopted to continue our excellence in education. All of these also come in the context of continuous improvement. Because we can't stay still with our current successes, we need to continue to move forward, which is critical to any organization's success. If we keep this up, we'll continue to receive recognition like the recently awarded Granville High School Award for the Granville Blue Ribbon Schools, where we're only one of 50 schools in the entire nation to receive this kind of success. It's really our entire community that contributes to this, and I'm proud of our district and the outstanding results we've been able to demonstrate. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Rana O'Day. I'd like to also thank the League of Women Voters and the Granville Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event tonight, and for everybody who's viewing, thank you. One of the main reasons my husband and I moved here 12 years ago was the excellent school system. We didn't have kids at that time, but we knew that we wanted to have kids, and this little community with schools, with excellent schools, was the perfect fit for us. We've both enjoyed being active members of the community since we moved here. My appreciation of and desire to protect Granville's open spaces has led me to serve on the Granville Township Land Management Committee. We currently have 2 kids in the Granville school system. My son Amir is in 2nd grade and Amjad's in kindergarten. And we have one at the Granville Parent Co-op where I have served as a board member and learned some skills that will help me to serve the Granville School District. I'd love to give back to our community and support all of our children by serving on the Granville Board of Education. I strongly support Granville's Portrait of a Graduate and would prioritize a well-rounded education with a focus on the whole child. The 2 characteristics that stand out to me the most are critical thinking and empathy. When we equip students with the ability to analyze ideas and situations, they learn to problem solve, which is an essential skill for young adults to adapt to and navigate the world outside of high school. Empathy also stands out because I believe that we are all more similar than different, and we all have something that connects us all. When we learn to empathize with other people's situations, we can build a kinder community and find common ground in which everyone can succeed. I would also promote cultural competence because we live in a globalized world in which students will need basic interpersonal skills to be able to communicate across cultures in their future endeavors. As a part of my focus on mental wellness, I would also advocate for more physical activity and outdoor time for kids in grades K through 6. Studies show that exercise and being outdoors reduce stress levels and can help students focus better in the classroom. This doesn't necessarily mean more recess. There are plenty of lessons we can take outdoors. For example, in kindergarten, the teachers spent several days learning about the parts of a plant in their science lessons. And that's something that we could easily take outside. The kids can have fresh air and learn about the parts of an actual plant, which will develop their hands-on learning experience and provide them with a better learning experience. Education is about so much more than memorizing answers and taking tests. It's about learning for life and equipping students with the skills they need to be collaborative, critical thinkers, empathetic, adaptable, responsible, and resilient. Thank you to everyone watching again, and thank you for participating in our beautiful democracy.
I'm Amy McAllister, and I'm running for one of the 2 open school board seats on the Granville School Board. And I echo the thank yous to those who set up this forum this evening so that we can talk to you in your homes. I have a master's in public administration and experience with state and local policy and laws. I come to the table with past experience in schools. I've worked in university development and grant writing and not-for-profit. I have 3 kids in the Granville School District, so obviously I have a vested interest in our schools remaining excellent. But even before I had kids, I saw education as an important step or to a solution, or at least a component of the solution to a lot of the problems that we see in society today. I've toured many high-performing schools in Ohio, and I can tell you that many of them are simply copies of one another. But Granville is different. We are able to maintain a small school district, which I know is important to so many of us, but we're also able to offer competitive and high-level AP classes, sports, our academic clubs, the arts, our music programs, all of those things that make up that rich and varied curriculum that we can offer here. I love our Granville schools, our administrators, we love our teachers. They really are the heartbeat of our schools. Some people have asked me what I want to change and why I'm running for the school board. And I'm not a candidate who intends to come in and try and change everything. I think we have a good foundation here in our Granville schools. But there are some things that we need to keep our eye on. And these are things that we'll talk about and that I will talk about specifically during the forum. Everyone who lives here has the expectation that our schools will be excellent, and rightly so. We have an amazing support system here in Granville. Our parents and our community bring so much to the schools. I expect to be accountable to our parents and our community members, and if you elect me, I will be part of a 5-person body whose job it is to listen to our community members and parents. You'll hear me say this a lot tonight in several of my answers, but it's literally the job of the school board to act as a liaison between the public and the school administration. Our taxes are high, and I know curriculum and finance are 2 of the school board's main jobs. It's the job of the school board to make sure that we get maximum educational value for every dollar that we spend, to really keep an eye on those finances. I hope that as you get to know me this evening and that you hear my viewpoints, that you see me as a candidate who is a candidate of common sense. There are many issues in our community today that are polarizing, and my hope is that our schools are a place where we can come together to provide the best education possible for our kids. I will be an advocate for you on the school board, and I hope to earn your vote tonight, and that you will vote Amy McAllister for Granville School Board. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. And thank you, Rita and Steve, one more time, because 5 thank yous are better than 1. Let me first begin by saying this forum here tonight might be breaking the internet. What a tremendous event that we can come together, hosted by the League of Women Voters of Licking County and the Granville Area Chamber of Commerce, to hear from the school board candidates ourselves, to hear and see our experience, to hear and see our knowledge, and to hear and see our desire to serve in a real-time format. So hello, Granville. Hello to the parents. Hello, teachers. Hello to my supporters, and most of all, hello to the students watching here tonight. My name is John Cronk. Over the last 10 years in this great community, I have had the fortunate opportunity to meet hundreds of families, either as a youth sports coach, a past Sunday school teacher at St. Ed's, the volunteer coordinator for the new Wildwood Playground build, and currently serving as your Granville Recreation Board of Trustees chairman. All that aside, my most important job is a husband and a loving father to 2 kids in Granville schools. My wife Ann and I moved to Granville, much like the rest of the 4 of us, for what else a small school feel. We moved here because we knew Granville had phenomenal academics, diverse arts, as well as unrivaled athletics. The current Blue Ribbon Award that was just received is proof of that. And I would be remiss if I didn't congratulate Mr. Brown, Mr. Durst, the current Board of Education, and the entire staff who contributed to that award. I feel candidates for this position need to have knowledge of the Granville school funding history. They do need to have knowledge of the short and long-term challenges we do face as a community. Those include teacher contract negotiations. Those include the income tax renewal, soon to be on, as well as potential and capital improvements that we need for our aging buildings. In addition, knowledge of the current community, residential and building improvements, and current relationships with the village and multi-township leadership, of which I all possess. Most importantly, though, is for these 2 successful candidates here tonight, that they take on this position and look through an objective lens and do not abruptly change the direction of the schools based on any current political, economic, social biases, or division. And a school board should and will be apolitical at its core. If elected, I will make those decisions in mind with nothing but the students, to keep the students and community first. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. I almost feel like we should have applause at this point. I really enjoyed your self-introductions, and I hope our viewers will find them as useful as I did. We're going to move into the questions part, and we're going to start the questioning with Thomas Miller and move down the table so that Dennis Capps will be the last one answering the question. The first question is actually a two-part question. Have you talked to school board members or to members of the staff of the Granville EVSD about current concerns? Describe how you plan to stay current on matters affecting the Granville School District. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Rita. My wife and I have 5 children we've raised in Granville. Our oldest started school 20 years ago, and our youngest, hopefully, will graduate from Granville High School in 2026. Maybe that just makes me old, but I also think it gives me some perspective on our schools and our community. Our kids have been in so many sports and bands, classes and clubs. I've coached sports, robotics, and academic extracurriculars. We've outlasted 3 different principals at the elementary school, and I've formed strong friendships and working relationships with teachers, administrators, coaches, and board members. The question asks if I've spoken with board members or teachers, and I can tell you I've literally heard from hundreds of community members recently. I meet and talk to people at sporting events and concerts, and often for coffee or in front of WITS. I've also talked to township trustees and council members, and nearly all of the candidates for those offices. Making the right decisions for our schools involves listening to many people, including our students of all ages. Another great way that I stay in touch with the community is through volunteering on our school district superintendent committees. We have a finance committee composed of high-level executive, political leaders, and extremely knowledgeable community members offering guidance on all of our financial matters. Our operations committee has members with wide-ranging experience on issues from real estate to building management, and we're truly fortunate to live in a community with so many high-caliber professionals. I encourage any community member, including the other candidates here at the table, to join one of the committees to share your expertise. It's a great way to stay in touch. Listening to diverse perspectives of our community members is important to come up with policies to meet the needs of our students. Granville has always been diverse in our perspective, but an engaged and supportive parents. With different perspectives on many issues, they're not going to change. We need to listen openly so that we can have schools that meet the needs of our students. I've shown that I'm open to listening, and I promise to continue my practice of being open to input, thoughtfully considering alternatives, and attempt to come up with the right policies to meet the needs of our students.
As soon as my petition to be a candidate was validated, I reached out to sitting board members, Brittany, our school's treasurer, Jeff Brown, our superintendent, and community members to learn about the role of the school board member and to find out what the pressing issues are in our school district. Many of the questions I have gotten have been about the mask mandate and critical race theory. The way that schools have become a focus in national political discourse is distracting from what school boards need to be focusing on. A school board member's primary roles are to hire and review the superintendent and treasurer and to support students, teachers, and staff. I'm excited to serve on the superintendent committees where I can hear more from community members, students, and teachers about curricular matters, the mental well-being of students, issues related to diversity and inclusion, and the IEP programs. That's how I plan to stay current on the current issues, and I've always been an active member of the community, and I plan to continue to be so. Thank you.
Great. So absolutely, I think any good candidate for school board would have met with the current school board members. I've met and talked with a number of our school board members in person. Of course, I've attended board meetings and watched all of the board meetings online, as many of you have over the last year, in addition to meeting with parents and community members. I sat down with our superintendent, Jeff Brown, as well as our treasurer, Brittany Triolo, after announcing my candidacy. When I met with Mr. Brown, we talked extensively about his vision for the schools, about the growth in our schools and keeping an eye on class sizes. When I talked with Ms. Triolo, we talked about broadly about district finances, but also specifically about teacher salaries, about regular building maintenance, different funding sources, and the additional fees that parents pay on top of taxes. I was just talking the other day with one of our school board members about the budget in 2018, when because of funding we had to cut 2 of our librarian positions. Many of you know that our librarians have both a master's degree and a teaching degree, and that there is a direct correlation between reading levels in schools and having these highly trained individuals in the schools. So that was especially sad. And I know that we almost lost our intermediate strings teacher in 2018, but that our Granville music boosters stepped forward and offered a grant to help cover the cost of his salary. Some of the other boosters were worried about this because they wondered if they would be called on to cover the salaries of other teachers instead of having that as a regular expected line item. This is important to me because we need 2 things in our schools. We need our really great teachers, and we need our good buildings to teach our kids in. We have to keep a more watchful eye on these line items. I'm committed to continually having an open door to those administrators, staff, teachers, and of course, parents and our community members. Thank you.
Yeah, so when we come across this question, is any one of us who is running for this open spot should be involved in the schools, not only currently, but with a long history as well. So I've had the fortunate opportunity to know many of the Granville school teachers as well as the Board of Education, and have spoken with most of them, if not on a monthly, a weekly basis for the past several years. When we talk about the concerns that might be brought up or a plan of action to stay on top of things, number one, a school board's not going to be here to micromanage teachers, to micromanage the curriculum, to micromanage the schools. It is a high overarching position that ensures the continuity of education and moving Granville forward with the great schools that we currently have. When I take a look at some of the concerns and how I plan to stay on top of those, I currently look at the open positions that our Granville schools have to offer and maybe wonder why reasons that they are open. Are they a new position, or are they a position that was previously filled? A weekly rotation of school visits where you can find myself volunteering in each school at least once a month. Attend staff meetings and professional development days to show teacher support as well. And his monthly touch points with department heads just to make sure that everyone is on the same page. But really the ace up my sleeve is going to be my wife, Ann. She's been a school classroom teacher for the last 20 years. While not an employee of Granville, though, the spouse of a teacher hears of all the student successes, and they also hear of all the student challenges. Thank you very much.
Okay, it feels like the question was asked a long time ago, so I'll just restate it in a different way. Did you do your homework before running for school board? And I think just like all the other candidates up here, yes, I did my homework. I met with many board members, administrators, staff, teachers, students, taxpayers, and government officials. Many parents and folks in the community have reached out to me since I put my name out there to run for school board to ask to have coffee or have a chat or just get a simple question answered. I've honored all those requests. I've met with all those people. I've done a lot of listening. I've done a lot of learning. As a parent in the district and a longtime resident, I feel like I've been preparing for this in some ways without knowing it for a long time. But now that we're here, I think it's really important that parents have a voice. And if I'm elected to school board, my plan would be to listen to parents and community members and all taxpayers to make sure that they have a voice on the school board. I'll continue to engage with people in the community. I'll continue to have an open door policy. And I will encourage participation in committees, and I will also encourage passionate folks in the community to come to the board meetings and to speak their mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's time for our second question this evening, and we'll start with Ronna O'Day. I'll read the question for everyone. The Granville School District is currently funded by the state of Ohio, by property taxes, and by an income tax. What do you think of the funding structure and sources and the future?
The reason we pay such high taxes towards the schools is simply that state funding for schools is insufficient, and I personally believe that we need to make a push for more state funding. I think it's unsustainable for schools to need to try to pass a levy for funding It's time-consuming and unpredictable for the schools. We shouldn't have to rely on resident-funded levies to obtain funding for essential school programs or facilities. However, that is how our system is currently designed, and the ultimate solution is far outside the scope of school board members. In the meantime, I believe Granville schools should be fiscally responsible and use levies only as a last resort for funding. In my conversations with community members, many people have expressed concern about how development in Granville will affect the school system. It isn't an imminent issue yet, but I have talked with our superintendent and treasurer about this issue, and it looks like we may need a new campus within the next 10 years. The school board cannot do anything about current development, but the best way to curb development and residential development, I should specify, is by protecting our open spaces, which is a levy that's going to be on the ballot this election cycle. And this is one of the reasons that I serve on the Granville Township Land Management Committee and will support the open space levy. Thank you.
Great. So finance is an important part of this question. And this question talks specifically about state property taxes and income tax. But I would add that an especially relevant part of our funding comes from grants, federal and local, including our very own Granville Township and village government, who last year provided $180,000 in a grant for COVID relief. That's in addition to the COVID CARES packages and the federal government grants that we've received for COVID. Individual teachers in our school district write grants, and they do a great job, and our district actually applies for those federal and other grants. They're a part of our funding. My background in grant writing is something that I can bring to the board that I don't know that every candidate can offer. You may also know about the state legislature developing a new formula for school funding. The formula looks at local funding and changes the amount given to each school district based on the funding in our district. Obviously, this could put Granville in a less than desirable position as we go out of our way to make sure that our schools are funded well. It's a classic case of diverting funds from schools with a lower tax base. All of the candidates here today were actually asked about this formula, and you can see our responses on the 411.org voting guide. But I'm the only candidate that neither agreed nor disagreed that this formula would benefit the children in our school district. And the reason why is because we have no idea how these state funds are going to impact our school district. I know some will say it makes it easier for us to predict future funding, but as you know, the state just last year allocated money for each student, and at the end of the year, the last month of school, they cut that funding by 9%. So just an incredible amount, right as we're wrapping up the end of school year and teacher salaries. Our school board is responsible for Granville schools, and as a school board, we need to keep an active eye on our funding sources and structure to ensure educational excellence in Granville. Thank you.
The new Ohio school funding plan that was introduced this year by the general legislature, I feel will be a net loss for Granville. I will take a stand on that question and say that it will have a negative impact, not currently, but it will in the future. Granville offers a big school experience in education and extracurricular activities, but in a small school package. While Granville will not lose funding under this new formula, though, it will require more local or taxpayer funding going forward in order to maintain these offerings. I've looked at the research, I've looked at the law. School funding is now broken out into 3 categories based on this new funding plan. The base cost per pupil, which is identical across the state and local share, which makes up our taxes as well as some share again from the state, but then categorical aid and targeted assistance. 2 of these 3, Granville does have a disadvantage. Many schools have a combination of residential and commercial property taxes to shoulder this local responsibility, but Granville is one of the few that actually is driven mainly by residential taxes, approximately 90%. In the future, unless we find commercial development opportunities within the district in conjunction with working with the neighboring townships and village, any future taxes, again, will be put mainly on the residents.
Ohio has a need-based funding system. That means districts like Granville that are considered wealthy get very little from the state. It's based on the incomes in Granville and the property values. That's not changing, and we wouldn't want it to. But unfortunately, that means that a huge share of the tax burden falls to the residents. So I believe that it is going to be absolutely key to partner with village and township officials to find development and reasonable development that doesn't change the feel of Granville, but allows us to broaden the tax base and shift some of that burden to commercial development versus putting it all on the shoulders of our taxpayers. 70% of our school budget goes to salaries and pensions. Obviously, that can't change. We wouldn't want it to. We need to pay our great teachers and retain and attract the best. So that leaves a little sliver of 30% that's left to work with. As a small business owner, as someone who's invested in 3 scrappy startups, I am good at being fiscally responsible. I am good at finding money. And fiscal responsibility is a key issue for me. If I'm elected to school board, I will do everything within my power to take that burden off the Granville taxpayer as much as I possibly can. My commitment to financial responsibility is 100%.
Thanks. The reality is Granville will always be considered a wealthy school district by the state and will need to continue to rely on local tax revenue for our schools. I've been an active member of the Finance Committee since long before joining the school board, and I've been heavily involved with overseeing spending and income as a board member. The Finance Committee is typically our strongest fiscal conservatives, and I consider myself one of them, working as financial hawks to oversee our spending. But oftentimes, as we understand better our funding realities, these individuals become our greatest advocates to support levy committees and innovation projects of the districts for financial stability. Our balanced property and income tax strategy is needed to support business growth and long-term fiscal sustainability. Granville generates only 10% of local school tax from business, as opposed to typically twice that for other school districts in Ohio. In order to reduce the burden on residential taxpayers, we need to continue to pursue responsible business development. The good news is that the school district is now partnering with the village and township in a new economic development committee led by the Chamber of Commerce. Although there's been a lot of talk in the past about growing our more favorable business tax base, we have the opportunity to make real progress, and we urgently need to keep pressure on this committee to understand our opportunities and dedicate resources to the development effort. We maintain a delicate balance between tight control of limited budget so that we can continue to receive essential community support and retaining an excellent staff. Retaining and developing employees these days is one of the most important parts of any business or public organization, and we've seen lately that employee retention is so important to keep businesses open and organizations running. We need to continue to balance our cost per pupil as compared to other districts and with the quality of education that's expected in our schools. I'd like to also talk about other creative and important funding sources that I've supported. We now have more kids than ever participating in career tech courses. This contributes positively to our finances and gives students more choices to pursue after graduation. In addition, I'd like to thank the village and township for their support, helping us capture and realize ESSER funds. And I realize I'm over time, and I'm sorry, because I could talk all day on school finance, which is usually a boring topic. So if anybody has any more questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to talk more.
Thank you, candidates. Those responses were both thoughtful and informative, and I appreciate them. We'll move to the next question, and we'll start that question with Amy McAllister's response. The question is, what are your views on teaching about race and race relations? How might teaching these subjects change with the student age or grade level?
So I think this question is clearly referencing critical race theory, and I'm not going to skirt the issue. I think sometimes when we talk about race and race relations, it can be dismissed with a wave of a hand, and we're told we aren't teaching CRT in our district. And yes, we aren't teaching CRT, as in a high-level legal theory used to examine legal doctrine in a university setting. But people use CRT and equity, diversity, and inclusion interchangeably. From my interaction with parents and community members in our district, the concern with diversity, equity, and inclusion is a worry that their child will be made to feel like an aggressor or a victim. This is not what we want our children to think about themselves or others. As soon as you assign opinions or thoughts to a person based on the color of their skin, that is racism. It divides our children and it divides our community. Does race play a part in our history? Yes. Should we teach about it? Yes. We should teach our American and world history, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. I learned in school about abolitionism, I learned about the Civil War, the Underground Railroad, Dred Scott, Ruby Bridges, but we don't need to try and rewrite history. So what about grade level? Race relations are nuanced, and when it comes to the philosophical critique, this should be taught in older grades, after our students have gained an understanding of our history. Follow the building blocks we already have in place. We already have a guide. In 4th grade, we focus on Ohio history. In 8th grade, we focus on American and world history. We have the building blocks in place, and then we don't need to reinvent the wheel. When teaching about race relations, we want to make sure that we avoid the emotionality of the day. I want everyone to know that they can succeed in Granville schools and in our Granville school system independent of race or gender. There is no limitation. Thank you.
This is a great question and a great example of how having a transparent curriculum and effective communication established between teachers and parents. Teaching about race and race relations, of course, are an important part of American and world history and the education of a student who can develop critical thinking. In short, though, it only serves our students best when we teach them how to think and not teach them what to think. A new curriculum, though, not required for graduation, should always have an option of opt-out based on the parent and student best interest. A good example of this is the ROCKS program, or Ruling Our Experiences, for 8th grade girls. Parents are made aware of this curriculum well in advance, and they choose an opt-in or an opt-out basis depending on their child's maturity and acceptable content for that grade level.
So the question is, what are my views on teaching about race and race relations? And my answer would be, well, it really depends on what you mean by race and race relations. I don't believe that it should be a course or a subject taught on its own. I don't think it should be a new part of the curriculum. But as it comes up naturally in history and when age appropriate, I do believe that we should tell the truth about our country's past. Our country, like most countries in the world, have had racism in the past, which is completely wrong. I think when teaching it, it's important to put it in the right context of the time and at the world. It does not change the fact that it was wrong. What I'm happy to say is that our country has made incredible strides, and we've overcome much of this racism that existed in the past. Some evidence that I saw of this that I was encouraged to see and that I'll share with you, as I was perusing the U.S. Census data of 2020, I looked at higher median household incomes for different ethnic and racial groups. Whites were number 15 on that list. Above them were Nigerians, Colombians, Filipinos, Indians, and Chinese. I think this is representative of the strides that we've made as a nation. And I think it's important to have that context when we talk about the sins of our past. So, I believe that skin pigmentation should not be essential. I believe that individuals should be treated as individuals, not part of a monolithic group. I believe that any society that obsesses over race has a very unhealthy trait. And if you look at history, it has never worked out well for them. So I believe that we should spend our time including everyone of all races, and we should focus on uniting as a community, not dividing.
As an elected school board representative, my role is to represent the community and to support our administration and teachers. Board members don't write or censor curriculum, but set up systems to enable our professional teachers to take the state public school curriculum and adapt it to their students appropriately at all ages. I'd like to read just a small part of the Board of Education statement from earlier this year that I helped craft and support. Granville schools are not teaching or advocating critical race theory or promoting the founding date of our country to be changed to 1619. We are not suggesting that our students should feel shame or guilt related to their personal or social characteristics, and we are absolutely not anti-American. That said, we abide by federal and state anti-discrimination laws and are bound as a public school to educate all children in our district, regardless of race or other personal characteristics. It's also true that racist, sexist, and other discriminatory language and behaviors are violations of the district's student and employee codes of conduct and are not tolerated. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Superintendent's Committee is composed of community members representing all different views on this topic and has spirited discussions to help guide the schools to evolving our teaching. We need to prepare students to go into a changing world beyond Granville. If we start censoring content or facts from our nation's history or limiting teachers' abilities to appropriately discuss current events, it's a dangerous precedent. We can't ignore challenging times in our country's history. We need to learn from our past and embrace our nation's traditions of working through issues together.
I am very sensitive to teaching children at an age-appropriate level. While I strongly support a fact-based education in history, which includes racism, I don't think children in elementary school should learn about the violent aspects of our history. Instead, they should learn about people from different races and cultures to gain a basic understanding that there are diverse people in this world and we should be kind to everyone. The age-appropriate way to teach this to children is simply through picture books that promote being kind to others no matter who they are. Teachers can also promote kindness by celebrating art, literature, and cultures from around the world, which can teach young kids to recognize the common humanity in all of us. In middle school, students should learn the factual history of race relations, and in high school, they should begin to have more nuanced conversations about how that history shapes race relations today. Graduates of Granville High School need to be competent and confident in talking about race because they will enter an increasingly diverse world. For example, companies and colleges often ask applicants about their experience with diversity and inclusion. If we shield our children from uncomfortable conversations now, they will not be prepared for the real world, and we would be doing them a disservice.
Thank you all. Thank you. Let's move now to question number 4, and this will start with John Cronk. Question 4 is, please comment on the current Granville School District policies regarding COVID-19, vaccination, and masks.
Okay. Well, we only have 2 minutes. It won't be solved here tonight. It's going to take a lot longer than that. Any school health policy, number 1, should have only one goal in mind, and that's how do we avoid disruptions in learning. Disruptions in learning for the students, disruptions in learning for the teachers and staff. COVID contact tracing and isolated and quarantined students, we can be real, is an administrative nightmare currently for the Granville school districts, let alone for the leadership and teachers, but it's harder on the students themselves and parents. Continuous education has never been more at risk because of COVID-19, but there are ways to mitigate these disruptions to educations. As far as the policies asked in the question, currently, to my knowledge, there is no vaccination policy at Granville schools. If elected, I will never vote for one. This is a personal choice, and it will remain as such. To that point, I'll make my stance. I'm not anti-vax by any means. My family is fully vaccinated, but this is going to be a personal choice for those families. Because of the current guidelines set forth by the Licking County Health Department, individuals that are either wearing a mask consistently in the classroom setting or those who are fully vaccinated do not need to quarantine. So we have options available instead of setting a vaccination mandate. When it comes to masking, to me, like it's always been parent choice, but we've hit a crossroads, unfortunately, with K through 6. Kids need to be in school, especially in these younger years. Religious and medical exemptions still apply to the masking mandate. If you feel your child should not be in one, they are free not to. But to be clear, if elected, I will work to remove the mask mandate if it's not removed already, because the long-term potential development and mental challenges that may arise from masking younger students, for me, far outweigh the short-term, non-acute effects of COVID on children.
So I think we can all recognize that the schools were put in a really tough position with COVID-19. There's no training for a school board or administrators when it comes to a pandemic. I think the goal of the schools has been to keep kids in the classroom, which I applaud, and I think it's fantastic. I know that they're under harsh restrictions with quarantine guidelines from the health department, so there's a recognition that it's not an easy situation. But let me be clear when I say that health decisions are very nuanced and very individual. What is the right health decision for one person may not be the right health decision for the next person. So I believe that families are in the best position to make the call what's right for them. So I am opposed to mandates of any kind. I believe in the freedom of individual families to make the choices of what is best for them. There's a lot that we still don't know about COVID, but one thing that I am incredibly thankful for, as I'm sure we all are, is that for 99.999 repeating % of children, when COVID is contracted, it's usually very mild. What we don't know about COVID are the long-term health effects of some of the responses that we've had to it. What are the developmental issues that a child has by going to kindergarten and first grade and never seeing their teacher smile? What is the psychological impact? We can only look at clues, but some alarming data that I've seen from the CDC is if you look at suicide rates in 18 and under from 2019 to 2020, there was a 23% jump. I think it would be safe to say that that is quite the risk, and a risk that I wouldn't want to take. So I believe that not enough airtime has been given to the trade-offs of what we've done to combat COVID-19. I think we've done our best, but I think we could do better.
Yeah, the last 18 months have been hard with no playbook for anybody. The school years have not been perfect, but better than most everywhere, and I'm really proud of our results. We've survived only through amazing dedication of time, reviewing cases, contact tracing, and teaching in all new ways. Last year, we gave families a choice to be remote or full-time in person. The result was that we had virtually no transmission in the classroom, and parents were able to choose the best learning option for their children. It was a hard year for a lot of reasons, but our results were far better than most. Teachers stepped up, elementary school remote teachers or upper grade level teachers dual teaching. Administrators stepped up with countless hours to keep kids safe. This year, we wanted to have all of our students back in school together with teachers and their classmates for the best educational experience. Great teaching and public school experiences rely on building relationships. So this became the theme of our school district this year. Giving parents and students the choice in mask wearing at the beginning of the school year enabled students to learn about making appropriate choices and to understand the consequences of exposure and spread through the state quarantine policies enforced by the health department. When it became evident that we could no longer teach successfully due to the high number of forced quarantines with the significant spread of positive cases in our community, we instituted a K-6 mask mandates to keep kids from being quarantined by the health department to increase the layers of protection. In all of our decisions, it's been important to stay focused on the local context and data. Education decisions are left best to the local level so that the needs of individual students can best be met.
This public health crisis is not a political issue for me whatsoever. In fact, before the semester started, I wasn't even sure that I was going to designate my kids as mask wearers until 2 days before the school year started. We went to meet the teacher night, and I saw how tightly packed the kids would be in the classroom. And my instinct immediately was that my kids, 2 of whom have asthma, definitely need to be masked. And I was okay with the option for parents to choose until I began receiving an email every other day saying that there was an infection at the elementary school level. And it's alarming, and I know that it was keeping students out of the classroom. Many kids have missed a significant amount of school based on the state-regulated quarantine guidelines. Students are also bringing it home and infecting more vulnerable members of our community. And I believe it's more beneficial to keep kids at school and to protect our vulnerable community members by wearing masks. I also strongly believe that teachers need to have a say in mask mandates. They put themselves at risk of getting sick every day and keep our amazing schools running. Without them, we would fall apart. So I would like to see the opinion of teachers weighed more heavily. Our school district made an evidence-based decision to mandate masks in grades K-6 because young students don't have the option to be vaccinated yet, and we were seeing higher rates of infection at the lower grade levels. Based on that scientific data, I believe they made the right decision. When we start to see a downward trend in infection rate, we would need to revisit the mandate based on the new data.
So mask mandates are definitely a top 3 question, and we're all watching the numbers. I think I'm pretty clear on my website that I am pro-vaccine and I am vaccinated. I wear a mask and my kids mask in school. But I am adamantly opposed to a mask and a vaccine mandate. I am pro-parent choice. I've listened to too many parents, like the father who spoke at the August school board meeting, who talked about his son with the cochlear implant who reads lips, and how he didn't make it a week into school last year before they had to pull him and teach him at home. I talked with someone in the community who said that this is a public health crisis, and if people don't like wearing a mask, they can leave. And I thought a lot about that. But just this year, 1.1 million students in the U.S. have left public school systems for homeschooling alone. And that's not including community schools or charter schools or private schools, for that matter. This can be incredibly damaging to our schools, both as a matter of for students and from a financial aspect. If you look at schools in Arizona, even before COVID, so many students were leaving the schools for charter schools and community schools that the public schools were actually suffering from a lack of funding. This is not an all or nothing. There is a middle ground, and we have a responsibility to provide a public education. You can't just say, if you don't like it, leave. This is a public health crisis, and we need to be taking precautions. We want our kids in school. In some ways, the hands of the school board has been tied by federal and state and local laws, like with contact tracing and quarantine. COVID updates should be regular at the school board. It should be a regular school board agenda item for the foreseeable future. Our community is experiencing some mask mandate whiplash, where we were finally able to unmask, and now we're facing another mask mandate in K through 6. The school board, as elected representatives, need to establish both a threshold for the implementation of masking, but also for when we can remove them. Thank you.
Again, thank you, candidates, for your candor on this very difficult topic. We now come to the last substantive question before the candidates will have 2 minutes for closing remarks. That last substantive question, we'll start again with Dennis Capps. And the question is, are you satisfied with the Granville School District's policies on and approach to discrimination with regard to sexual orientation, gender identification, and non-traditional families? Explain.
Thanks, Rita. So I am opposed to discrimination of any kind in our schools. I believe Granville's anti-discrimination policy makes that clear, and I agree with it. No child should ever be made to feel lesser because of their choices or their family's choices. This issue hits very close to home for me personally. One of the closest people in the world to me, in my family, is LGBTQ. I love her very much. She is one of my best friends. My kids love her very much. I know better than anyone that families come in all types. And I also understand that there are families that have different views and values than I do. I don't push my views or values on those families, and I don't want them to push those views or values on mine. At the end of the day, I believe that values conversations should happen at the home and should be driven by the parents. At school, I think we should focus on including everyone. And that's what I believe. That's it.
Yeah, the Granville schools have consistently worked to manage many individual circumstances with respect for families' choices and sensitivity toward individual differences. This is an area that demands continuous monitoring and continuous improvement to reflect the needs of the community. As a public school, we need to abide by national and state law in preventing discrimination. But I'm moved by the stories of many community members who come from single-parent families, adopted children, mixed race, and other non-traditional circumstances. I also believe that families need to have an open conversations at home about sensitive issues to prepare them and their children for the world around us. Some community members are unhappy because of the perception that the school district is propagating and promoting alternative choices, and I can assure you that's not true. Others think we're not going nearly far enough to protect and respect individual choice, and I agree that we need to continue to work hard in this area while respecting all perspectives. Our teachers are our greatest asset in promoting a positive culture in our schools, where various opinions are respected, and I fully support our teachers in their efforts to adapt curriculum for their students.
I was very pleased with the school board's message and stance at the most recent school board meeting where I spoke in support of our teachers. I would prioritize making sure that all students feel welcome and represented. I stand firmly for inclusion and kindness, and I believe it is the duty of public schools to be inclusive and prepare students for the real world. In Ohio's K-12 social and emotional learning standards, under Competency C, Social Awareness for grades K through 2, it is stated that teachers should discuss how people can be the same or different, participate in cross-cultural activities and discuss differences, similarities, and positive qualities across all cultures and groups, discuss the concept of and practice treating others the way you would want to be treated. I think our teachers do an excellent job. They follow high standards, and I want all students to be able to interact well with people who have different life experiences and viewpoints once they're out of school. Thank you.
So I'm going to start by breaking this question into two parts. First, I want to talk about the September school board meeting, which I think this question is clearly in reference to, and then I want to address the curriculum. So a policy statement was read at the beginning of the September board meeting supporting the family curriculum dealing with non-traditional families and sexual orientation. This was before the public comment period. Many people stood up at the board meeting on both sides of the issue and said things like, I'm going to talk about something completely different than I had prepared because of the policy statement that was already read. My question is, why are we even having a public comment period when the decision has already been made? To issue a policy statement before the public comment period and before the board has heard from parents and community members is not okay. I know that many were happy with the school board's decision, but I would urge you to consider if the board's decision were different, you would be left feeling unheard. I've said this before, but our school boards, one of the main roles of the school board is to act as a liaison between the public and the administration. The board has a responsibility and a mandate to listen to its citizens. I know our current board believes in promoting inclusivity, acceptance, and empathy, as we all do. But these are not just code words for accepting new societal norms. This means that we support traditional values as well. We support all religions, all individual ethics, morals, and values. And I don't think any thinking person would argue otherwise. Yes, non-traditional families matter. Yes, traditional families matter. Of course, we're teaching kindness. Our community is incredibly kind, which is why we've chosen to raise our family here. But the curriculum is being introduced the first year our kids are in kindergarten in public schools, and it deals with topics, overtly or not, that may not be inclusive of everyone's values. Our focus, especially in kindergarten, should be introducing these kids to a love of learning. And a possible solution to this could be transparency in the curriculum, giving parents more access to exactly what their kindergartners are learning. And it could quell a lot of the fears in our community. Thank you.
The Parent-Student Handbook for Granville Schools clearly outlines its position on non-discrimination within the schools in a statement that is actually on page 1. The question here is asked is, are we satisfied with the current policies? For me, in short, yes, I am, but there is also room for improvement. The policy outlines that it's zero tolerance for any discrimination in any form, but we can make this policy a little bit better. The violations ruled out that I found is a 4 demerit mark. I haven't heard demerit mark in 25 years, but it's out there. Some of the offenses that are listed in here are grouped in the same section. My stance is, from a discrimination standpoint, it needs to be pulled out and made more of a topic to students upon entering school on day 1. When we raise our children, we teach them that some offenses are worse than others. When we teach them not to touch a hot stove, they'll touch it once and never again. When we teach them not to put the toilet seat down after you know what, guess which one happens more. Thank you.
Thank you all. Let's take a deep breath. You've navigated through 5 tough questions, and we appreciate your candor, your forthrightness. So deep breath, and now we'll progress to the windup of our session tonight. Each of you will have an opportunity to provide closing remarks for 2 minutes, and we'll start with Thomas Miller.
Thanks, Steve. Being a school board member is a really important and challenging position in the community. I'm proud to do it and excited to keep doing it. I think it's great that there are so many folks stepping up and offering to serve the Granville schools. I love inviting in different voices and debating new and different ideas. That's how I want every school board decision to be. We want lots of community input and open and honest board discussion. We want to hear from diverse points of view. I love the engagement. I'm so proud of our board and how our district has weathered the last 18 months, not just to make it through, but remain the envy of most of the state of Ohio. I think we've seen all the images on the news in other districts where over the last 2 school years, there's not just debate, but outright anger. You've seen protests and angry outbursts and real community discord around COVID policies and national social issues coming from both sides that are amplified by national and social media. We've managed to rise above this in Granville. Our policies haven't been entirely unique among those other Ohio districts, but I'm proud that the process we've used to get to them, and the fact that we've put our kids and teachers first and steered clear of unnecessary fights over these kinds of divisive controversies, so Granville can rise above the national discord. We've made tough decisions. We haven't always agreed, but we've worked together and we've stayed a team through it all because that's what Granville is about. I'm running for re-election because I know that's how I would like it to stay in Granville. I look forward to continuing the ongoing work of the school district by managing finances sustainably, continuously improving curriculum, and running our operations to give students a great education along with extracurricular arts, athletics, and academic experiences beyond the classroom. Thank you for hosting tonight and for all of you watching. Thank you for your involvement as a voter in selecting a Board of Education best prepared to retain our tradition of excellence. I hope to be a part of it. Please reach out to me if you have any questions through the Board of Education website or visit milleronboard.com for more information. Thank you.
My family highly values education, and I think the path to learning for life begins in grade school, which is why I support providing our children with a well-rounded education and a focus on the whole child. Students are more than their test scores. They need a strong academic curriculum and programs that will ignite their excitement to learn, spark their creativity, and teach them to be responsible, compassionate, and adaptable adults. I'm running for Granville School Board because I have a passion for learning and a yearning for peace. I strive to find common ground with people. I am transparent and authentic in my responses about positions, and I have a genuine desire to help others. With so much polarization in our community and nation, I see the Granville School Board as an opportunity to bring people together by working across differences to create the best learning environment for our children. If you'd like to know more about me, you can also follow me on Facebook, Rana O'Day for Granville School Board, or my website, ranaforgranvilleschools.com. And I appreciate you, and I hope to have earned your vote. Thank you.
Whew, we all made it through. There's a lot of talking tonight. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you this evening. I am a candidate who is prepared both academically and practically with experience and expertise that could benefit our students. I have the experience necessary to be a productive board member, and I understand the role of our school board. As I've talked about, I think on every question, the role of the school board is to listen to its community members. I've talked with so many of you in our community about both your love for the schools and the challenges that you faced. Thank you so much for your support, and I've appreciated talking with so many of you in the community. I hope that those of you who are meeting me for the first time have gotten a sense of who I am as a person and how much I care about the success of our schools. We've covered a lot tonight, from finance to mask mandates, and I also welcome any other questions. My contact information is on my website, which is amyforgranville, AMYFOR, granville.com. I want to represent you, and I am asking for your vote. So please vote Amy McAllister for Granville School Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Steve. And we'd be remiss without our expert timekeeper, Richard, tonight. We've all answered here tonight some very important and pressing questions for our school community. But I do feel that, in my own mind, there also needs to be some consideration for some other pressing things that we need to think about in the short term. Protecting our community from explosive residential growth by working alongside village and township leadership. school infrastructure with safer lit walking paths and alleviate the traffic congestion because nobody likes Pearl Street at 7:45 in the morning. Identifying resources and programming for children who need that little bit of extra help but don't yet qualify for an IEP. Some of these are just more pressing questions that you can find out by talking to me or visiting my website, croncforgranville.com. You've heard about me, and you've heard about why I seek this position, but I wanted to share with you where it all started. You know, I had the opportunity to spend some time one cold week in the April 2017 with a Granville legacy. Don Lewis and I checked in every volunteer on every shift for 7 days straight, sun up to sundown, to rebuild the Wildwood Playground. During that time, Don and I had talked about the next generation of volunteers for this great community. What traditions, what events make this a great place to work, play, and live. Don told me that you don't need one or two people to carry the load to make this a great community. You just need a truck. Don's passing has inspired me, and I feel a new spirit of volunteering in this community because I know it has inspired me. And in addition to my stated positions, I ask that you look at my dedication, my passion for the Granville School District as you cast your vote. Who on this stage has earned your vote? Who on this stage will continue to work long after your vote is cast? Hopefully I've earned your vote tonight as well as your trust. Thank you.
Rita and Steve, thank you so much for hosting tonight. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Also, feel lucky that I got to open it and I get to close it. So thank you for that, although I'm sure it was not intentional. We sat randomly, so.
You flipped the coin.
There were a lot of hot topics that we addressed tonight, and I'm glad that we got to. But as you know, several have mentioned up here, the work of the school board is rarely those hot topics. It's many other things. So I wanted to let you know some of the topics that will be on my mind if I'm elected to school board. Number one, I've been in staffing and talent my whole life, and I know that if you want to have a great organization or a great school, you need the best teachers, you need the best staff, you need the best administrators. I have nearly 20 years of experience in that. I've worked with unions before. I've worked with many different organizations in procuring the best talent. I believe that it's critical for us to retain and attract the best teachers to Granville and make Granville the best place to work for teachers. That's how we do it. Another huge issue of mine, and if you've been on my website or you've talked to me before, you've probably heard me talk about it. The world has changed a whole lot in the 23 years that have passed since I graduated from high school. While I think that a college path makes sense for a lot of students, there are so many more options out there today that exist. Let's get those options in front of our students. Let's give them the opportunity to explore. It's wonderful what CTEC has to offer, but last year only 20 graduates took advantage of that. How can we look at those opportunities and others to make Granville better? So, another thing that is a big passion of mine, if you know me, is health, fitness, and wellness. I believe that's a life skill, and it's one that you take with you your whole life. So how can we make sure that we reinforce and instill that and educate our kids when it comes to that life skill that will be important for their whole life? Financial literacy is another thing that's incredibly important, and you can never start too early. Get your kids' bank accounts when they're young. Let's put stuff in the elementary school about that. I'm out of time. Richard's given me the hook, but thank you so much for having me tonight. I would be proud to be your school board member, representative.
Thank you all.
I just want to thank these candidates. I'm totally reassured by the quality of the candidates running for school board, and I think we're going to be okay, whatever happens. So good luck to everyone. You mentioned, in passing, some of you mentioned we work with trustees and others about, limiting growth or encouraging growth. Remember that there is a forum for the candidates for trustee and village council.
Next Tuesday night, 7 p.m., and we'll probably go till about 8:30 as we have done tonight. So we will very soon, tomorrow, we will post out new links that you can use to access that forum next Tuesday evening. I too want to thank all these candidates for their time and their motivation and their willingness to serve. And I also want to, we haven't probably thanked Jesse, the man behind the camera here tonight, who's helped us, yeah, please. Jesse Harmon, Audiovisual Connections. So thank you all. Thank you for tuning in, and hope we'll see you again next Tuesday evening. Thank you.